Thanks everybody for being here again. I'd now like to call the April 27th, 2021 Longmont City Council regular session to order. Let's go ahead and start with a visual roll call. The chair will note that everyone on council, including the mayor, is present. Let's go ahead and start with the pledge. Marcia, would you like to lead us?
No, but I will anyway. Here we go.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance
To the
to
flag,
the flag of the United
States of America, and to the
republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So chair would like to remind anyone wishing to provide public comment during public invited to be heard must watch the live stream of the meeting and then call in when the meeting is open for public comment. You'll get instructions like this on the screen when that happens. So let us continue. Do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes of April 13th, 2021? It was a regular session. Councilmember Christensen.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Christensen and seconded by Dr. Waters. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is that an aye or a comment, Councilmember Martin?
It was an aye.
Okay, all opposed, say nay. All right, the motion passes unanimously. All right, let's go ahead and, oh my gosh, you see here, we have a proclamation designating this month. The month of May 2021 is the Older Americans Month in Longmont, Colorado. And I just closed my Outlook. Hold on one second.
I will pull that up for you if you like here.
Yeah, just pull it up. Then I'm
Sure thing.
let's see here. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Sorry. All right, great. Just scroll with me. It's a proclamation designating May 2021 as Older Americans Month in Longmont, Colorado. Whereas Longmont includes a growing number of older Americans who have built resilience and strength over their lives through successes and difficulties. And whereas 14.5% of Longmont's population in 2019 was over 65 years of age and currently representing the fastest growing age group in the state. And whereas Longmont benefits from people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds are included and encouraged to share their successes and stories of resilience. Whereas Longmont recognizes our need to nurture ourselves, reinforce our strength, and continue to thrive in times of both joy and difficulty. And whereas Longmont can foster communities of strength by creating opportunities to share stories and learn from each other, engaging older adults through programs supporting physical, mental, and emotional well-being through education, recreation, and service, and encouraging people of all ages to celebrate connections and resilience, and engaging and supporting all who care for older persons. And whereas the stories and contributions of older persons help to support and inspire others, this Older American Month, we celebrate the strength of older adults in the Aging Services Network with special emphasis on the power of connection, engagement, and building strong communities. Now, therefore, I, Brian J. Bagley, Mayor, by virtue of the authority vested in me and the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim May 2021 as Older Americans Month in Longmont and encourage every resident to recognize older adults and the people who support them as essential contributors to the strength of our community. Signed, the Mayor. At this time, I would like to invite council to accept this proclamation on behalf of all the older Americans on council. I'm just kidding. You don't have to do that, guys. But we just wanted to recognize that many of these glorious 14.5% control our town. So nice to see that you guys are in power. Hope you enjoyed the proclamation. Thank you for your service. All right. That said, let's move on to, oh, hold on a second. What happened to my agenda? There it is. All right, so let's move on to the city managers. Actually, do we have any agenda revisions or submission of documents at this time? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and move on to the council member, or sorry, Mayor Pro Tem. Was that a hand? Okay, let's go on to the city manager's report. You want to fill us up to date? How are the hospitals doing, Harold?
Doing well. I'm going to show you 3 slides quickly. I've got to move some stuff around on my screen so I can do this and share with you all. Share my screen. So on this screen, you all will see this is what we're seeing in terms of hospitals in Boulder County. So As of the 26th, we had 28 people hospitalized. We had 25 last week. And so you can see that slight trend upward again that we're seeing. And then the next slide, this is really what it looks like from a state level. Currently, there are 606 people hospitalized for confirmed COVID-19 across Colorado. Last week, we had 510 people hospitalized. So you can see that that's an increase of about 19%. And I talk about this because that's actually what folks are going to be looking at as we move forward with these new orders and where we sit. It's really going to be based on hospital capacity. I did want to show you this chart. I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to show you a different chart. So you saw what we're seeing in terms of hospitalization now. This is a chart. It's a few days behind, but this is where we, and are you seeing one with a graph on it? So this is the Denver Metro hospital admission rates by county, and I'm going to read that to you because I'm going to slide down. So when you look at really that threshold where we were over the limit, it really was around this time frame. And so this is what the entire metro area looks like. So when I come in and draw the Boulder numbers, so 2 is the number that you heard us talking about with the state and the new order. So that's when the retraction comes back in place as they've discussed it. And if you look at this, so it was on the 24th of November until approximately the 6th of December. That's the only time we crossed that threshold in terms of Boulder County. But you can see what's happening here, and this is what folks are watching. So you can see the broader metro area moving up. As a county, we move down. Obviously, you can see that where we're increasing, and it's probably going to do that a little bit more when we catch up. But to give you a perspective, I'm going to layer Denver in this, and you can see that Denver's really mirroring the broader metro area. But then when you drop in Arapahoe, you can see that they're actually higher. So you have that, you can see what's happening in terms of hospital admissions. And then I'm going to drop in Douglas, and it's with the area, Jefferson. And you can see where they were down with Boulder, but now they're moving up. And then Adams. And you can see Adams was down, but then moving up and then moving down again. And then last, I'm going to throw in Broomfield because Broomfield tends to be lower and they move around a lot just because of their size. So what you can see in terms of the hospital admissions piece, the broader metro area is really higher than we are in Boulder County and in Broomfield. But when you look at that threshold that they're talking about in terms of the new orders and the new status, it's at this blue line. So in terms of hospital capacity, we're still in a good spot, but everyone is really watching this trend in the broader metro area. And as that changes, we'll let you all know. But instead of going through all the data that we used to go over, those are the 3 points that we're going to be talking about with you all, because that's really what's going to control how we move forward through this process. The one thing I will say is the CDC did come out today and changed some of the their recommendations on masking. And so they were very specific to say that if you're vaccinated outside, you don't need to wear a mask. They didn't address inside in masking. What was interesting is part of some of the conversations I was seeing this afternoon, and I'm going to try to dig this data up. But really the chances once you're vaccinated of getting sick or getting hospitalized, and then mortality related to if you're vaccinated, it's very, very low. And there was actually someone talking today that they really wish the CDC would really push those numbers out more, because the big thing that we all need to do right now, and this is, I think, anytime we get a chance, is really to continue to encourage people to go in and get vaccinated. There's spots available. You can go into different locations. There's a lot of clinics available. In terms of the equity clinics, there's going to be one in Lafayette, I believe, this weekend, similar to what we had at Front Range. We're continuing to work on that. They're evaluating the hours at some of the clinics so they can make it accessible. So if we all do one thing in the coming weeks, is just continue to, in all of our circles, encourage folks to get vaccinated, because the data is really showing that it's working. And the more we get vaccinated and the faster we do it, the less strain that's going to continue placing. But ultimately, that really helps us get out of the situation we're in. So that's what you're going to hear me talking about from here on out. It really is about getting people vaccinated and watching the hospitals. That's really where that's what we're going to be focusing on. And we're going to continue to do everything we can to make those opportunities accessible to everyone. So other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Christensen.
This isn't actually a question, Harold, but I just wanted to say that give a shout out to the city because we opened Lashley Street Station, right? And that's
Yep.
run by the city. And my son has registered at several other places and nobody ever called him back. He went online because somebody suggested that and was able to register in less than a minute, pick his time and day. It was the next day. He got a confirmation call within a minute. It was excellent. I don't understand why other people are not following that kind of protocol to set up scheduling because it's wonderful. And so he's halfway done now and he's scheduled for the second one. And that's solely because the city set up a really good system there. And it's also small enough that the neighborhood people can come over and get their shots, and Salud always does a very good job of everything. So anyway, I wanted to thank the city for doing that. It really is a wonderful place to get vaccinations and incredibly efficient. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's actually, I want to point out, you mentioned it is Salud that's doing it. And, we provided the facility. Shannon and Kevin worked with them in doing it. And so they're doing that in some of the other locations too. But that's part of the national program that Salud got in terms of getting vaccine too. So it's been a great partnership with them. Actually, Dan's on the line, but they're working to extend it. They were doing it, I think, 3 days a week. They really want to do that 5 days a week now. And so that's what we're talking about. And Dan and Kevin and Shannon have done a great job in working with people to get those set up.
All right, Councilmember Martin.
Yeah, if this is a premature question, just tell me to go away. But I've had a couple of emails about constituents who couldn't get anybody on the phone. And I have had that experience myself. That when people are working from home, they're working from home and they answer their emails, but the phones aren't forwarded. And I'm just wondering how soon we're gonna, or whether we've begun planning back to a normal work schedule where the phones are manned more consistently as people start to try to access recreation services, for example.
So a couple of things on that. We do have people in, we probably have more people there. I will tell you that when we do work remotely, so my office phone is live with me. And so if folks aren't able to get in, I would say that we can reach out to the main number for the city so we could try to get them in, or they could call our office too to see what's going on, because unless we're on a call, I can take calls from my office phone here. Now, the reality is we may be on other calls too, but we'll look into it. But we're starting that planning right now in terms of bringing folks back. What I will tell you all, we're probably a little ahead of most of the other communities in Boulder County. So we have really been open for a while, at least with the reduced amount of folks in the office. Some of our other communities haven't opened yet. And so we're going to start bringing folks in as we're looking and watching the orders based on the amount of people we can have. I will tell you, we're going to still need to be careful because we have continued to see situations where somebody would be positive. And if you have too many people together, you don't want to have to then quarantine an entire department. So we're managing that too as we look at this. So we're going to continue bringing more folks on. But most operations should have people, well, all of them should have someone in there that can do that. And we'll follow up on it. I'll get with you on some specifics so we can make sure that we're connecting appropriately. But you'll see that within the next month. You'll see that roll up in the next month.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Harold. Let's move on to the special reports. We also have an annual report and presentation for the Senior Citizens Advisory Board.
Hello, Mayor Begley, members of council, audience members. My name is Michelle Waite. I'm the manager of senior services, and with me tonight is Art Quintana, vice president of the Senior Citizens Advisory Board, and we will present tonight's report. I'm going to start things off, and Art will join me later. However, if you have any questions, please feel free. There are board members and staff present listening tonight, and I just want to acknowledge all of them and thank them for their work in 2020. It was an unprecedented year, as you all know. Erica, would you like to pull up the presentation, please? Thank you. So as many of you know, the Senior Center closed its facility on March 13th of 2020. And this year, for the first time, we combined the annual report of the advisory board, the staff, and the Friends of the Senior Center. Go ahead, Erica. Has driven our work this last year. And for the senior services, it resulted in several things. Most important to mention is that even though the facility closed its doors, the staff and volunteers continued to provide programs and services, both virtually as well as over the phone. And early on in the pandemic, we did receive permission from Boulder County Public Health to do one-on-one in-person assistance for basic needs in a safe and controlled environment, which was very important. And the senior services staff were able to be repurposed and were able to support facilities that remained open. And so all of the staff continued to operate at their full levels. Erica? The initial focus after we closed our doors in March of 2020 was really around responding to the immediate needs. Did people need masks, food, and as well as things like toilet paper and sanitizer? That quickly, and maybe not as quick as some had hoped, moved into access to testing. And then of course, more recently has really been about accessing vaccination information. And so senior services was providing that information through a variety of sources, and we'll get to that in just a minute. I think it's also important to note that Longmont Meals on Wheels, housed in the senior center, though they closed the on-site dining, they immediately began offering meals in a different way. And so they took over the dining room at the senior center, and it has been used throughout the closure as their staging area, as they were serving additional meals, but to additional people. And they were also, especially early on, providing things like toilet paper and sanitizer. Erica? So communication needs were really, really important this past year. And so we were able to increase our email subscribers. We also increased our email newsletters themselves. We went to once a week for the English version and once a month for our Spanish version. We also made a lot of phone calls, and we had a number of customers who wanted us to remain in contact with them via the phone. And so we kept that list going and stayed in contact with our volunteers, our leaders of classes, and also those customers who wanted to maintain a phone connection. Throughout this last year, the Friends of the Senior Center were indeed very, very, very good friends. They were able to continue to pay our instructor fees so that all of the programs that we offered online in 2020 were able to be free of charge. and we could still compensate those individuals who supported those programs. They paid for a HIPAA compliant platform so that we could continue to offer emotional support in a confidential and private way. They also totally committed their funds through our last resort requests, which staff are integrally involved in, and spent over $38,000 primarily in the area of housing, but really supported those impacted by COVID as well as those impacted by other issues. The Friends also provided $5,000 for technological devices, and in partnership with Boulder County Area Agency on Aging, so far we've been able to hand out 49 devices, and we are moving on and taking lists of other individuals and looking at ways to ensure internet connection as well as printing capabilities. Erica? The Age Well Strategic Plan, which many of you have heard about since 2006, efforts were stalled in 2020. The plan is built around 4 quadrants, and going forward, this plan will be built around a World Health Organization and an AARP a framework for age-friendly communities. And so we will be moving in to an 8-domain versus a 4-quadrant approach. And not surprisingly, those 8 domains have had 4 areas added to them, including public safety, elder abuse, emergency preparedness, and dementia-friendly communities. So the next time we come back with our Age Well strategic plan to council and to our community, it will be a broader and in some ways a little bit more focused planning process. And we have a meeting tomorrow to re-engage around that plan and move that forward. Next. So looking at the annual report in terms of our Age Well planning quadrants, we had 110 individuals, you can see from the screen, who received counseling. We also utilized an intern and our peer support volunteers who were able to continue to provide the kind of emotional support. Continued with several of our support group options virtually, as well as telephone support through our counseling services. And we were able, thank goodness, to keep golf going, as well as some of our fitness programs through our connection with city recreation services. Erica? Basic needs were a huge component in 2020. As mentioned already, the Friends support was critical. We also have a great partnership with Longmont Sunshine Club, the oldest civic group in Longmont, and they provided over $3,500 in oral health care. We saw 526 new clients for information, referral, and assistance. I know of particular note to this council has been around those who were at risk of homelessness or homeless at the moment. And you can see we served 74 individuals and 58 people received more specialized case management services. Thrilled to be able to give Meals on Wheels credit. They served 127,515 meals in 2020 to over 1,000 different people. So really wonderful service. They were able to do sometimes a frozen meal and a hot meal 7 days a week. And it was a really great way to keep connected and keep people with nutrition. Erica? Over the years, I think you've heard me talk about our Regalo de Paz, our end-of-life Spanish program for people to be able to do their advanced directives. Throughout 2020, we were able to help 59 people get their end-of-life planning in order. We served over 170 caregivers. And not surprisingly, our technology program, which many of you are aware of, our senior computer tech program, we closed our doors March 13th, and almost immediately they had their Zoom account set up and they were shifting to a technologically virtual platform. And they have served As you can see by those numbers, over 1,600 people were served through the oh my goodness, our tech center. I was going to say it, tech center. Erica. And then last, personal connection and community. I think through our pandemic, we have certainly learned the impacts of isolation and ways to really reach people. I think we learned through the initial vaccine sign up that was all online, what a struggle it was in terms of the digital divide for many of our older adults and those without access to technology. We continued to offer programs, we continued to make phone calls, we continued our email, and certainly using technology, both the phone technology in terms of our bridge calls, but also virtual platforms to reach people, to connect them with resources as well as programs. I'm going to turn it over to Art, and he is going to talk just a little bit about the Senior Citizen Advisory Board specifically in 2020. So Art, if you'd like to go, Erica can pull up that slide.
Okay. First of all, I would like to say that on behalf of the Senior Advisory Board, we'd like to thank the mayor and the city council for the proclamation and in the recognition of that. Next, I want to talk about the board members participated in the hiring of two people at the senior center, the resource specialist and a custodian, and both of whom happen to be bilingual and bicultural. We've also provided input into the Age Well strategic plan. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we've had to slow down a little bit and put it on hold. However, soon we will be continuing with that. Also, I just want to say that we are just fortunate to have the board members that we do have, who in addition to attending our regular board meetings, are involved in as liaisons on various other boards. Again, we really appreciate being on there and enjoy participating and giving back to our community, especially the senior center.
Okay, Erica. And so just wrapping up 2020, don't need to tell you, City Council, the work that we've been doing on behalf of the Longmont Housing Authority, but with 6 of the 9 properties owned by Longmont Housing Authority as older adult housing, it was a perfect partnership to bring senior services in, and it was very exciting and important for our staff to connect in this way with LHA, with the Housing Authority work and their staff, and we look forward to continuing that partnership and that engagement with the residents and with the staff of the Housing Authority. Erica? In addition, 2021, we are looking forward to reopening, and I'm thrilled to say we're going to do so Monday, May 3rd. We will be open limited hours from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And we'll kind of get our feet on the ground, see what happens over the next few weeks in terms of Boulder County Public Health. And so we're working on the logistics and the marketing, and we will be open for senior center business, primarily on a reservation system. However, we will continue to do our information, referral, and counseling services. As we look forward to 2021, we're going to be addressing ageism, and the advisory board is going to kick that off in June with a training session brought to us from Boulder County Area Agency on Aging. And we will continue to move that forward, as well as looking at the Age Well plan itself. So those are some big things for 2021. I also want to thank the advisory board for all of their work. They have been stalwart. They have been everywhere they could be to represent older adults, and they're an incredible group of folks. Thank you, Mayor Bagley and Council, for the proclamation, and that concludes our annual report.
All right, thank you, Ms. White. Thank you so much for doing that. You do wonderful work over there at the senior center. And whenever I go over, I've enjoyed the dances, I've enjoyed the activities, and just keep it up. That sounds awesome. Thank you. And Art, you too. Thank you very much for being here tonight and presenting that. Just big hats off. It's a wonderful amenity and resource we have in our community. Thank you. Any other questions from council? Councilmember Christensen.
Not a question, just thank you, Michelle and Mr. Quintana for being here and for all that you do. I, as a member of the vastly aging populace, I've been really quite surprised at how fearful people who are older have been during this pandemic. And I am sure that you have saved some lives because people have felt very isolated and very frightened. And knowing that there's somebody there that will talk to them and help them and just walk them through what they need to do to get what they need, it is worth its weight in gold. So I thank you, all of you who are doing what you're doing, because it's very important. It's been an extremely isolating experience for a great many seniors. Thank you.
All right, what I'd like to do now is, if we could, Dawn, we're going to do a twofer. What I'd like to do is, let's go ahead, and we're not going to take a break. Well, let's go ahead and put up the first call public invited to be heard. First call public invited to be heard. And so while we do that, while we invite people to call in, what I'd like to do is, Dawn, can you go ahead and read the consent agenda? And then let's go ahead and not take a motion or pull anything until after first call public invited to be heard. And let's just keep the first call public invited to be heard line open for a couple of callers. That'll save us some time. So we'd at this time invite the public to call in while we're reading the consent agenda into the record.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Item 9A is ordinance 2021-27, a bill for an ordinance authorizing a farmland lease agreement between the City of Longmont and Alan Seawald on the Adrian Open Space. Public hearing and second reading scheduled for May 11th, 2021. 9B is ordinance 2021-28, a bill for an ordinance approving an amendment to the Vance Brand Municipal Airport Hangar Parcel H41 lease. Public hearing and second reading scheduled for May 11th, 2021. 9C is resolution 2021-40, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the amendment to intergovernmental agreement between the City of Longmont and Colorado Department of Human Services Office of Behavioral Health for a grant amendment to support the Longmont Public Safety LEAD program. 9D is resolution 2021-41, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the amendment to intergovernmental agreement between the City of Longmont and Colorado Department of Human Services Office of Behavioral Health for a grant amendment to support the Longmont Public Safety Crisis Outreach Response and Engagement Team. 9E is resolution 2021-42, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Colorado Department of Public Safety Division of Criminal Justice Office for Victims Programs for grant funding for victim services. 9F is resolution 2021-43, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving an intergovernmental agreement between the city and Platte River Power Authority for engineering support services. 9G is resolution 2021-44, resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city acting by and through its water utility enterprise and St. Vrain and Left Hand Water Conservancy District for water supply. 9H is resolution 2021-45, a resolution of the Longmont City Council authorizing an agreement between the City of Longmont and Ava Jo Logan for the purchase of real property in support of quiet zones to close the Terry Street at-grade rail crossing. And 9I is resolution 2021-46, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Longmont and the Federal Aviation Administration for grant funding under the Airport Coronavirus Response Grant Program.
All right, do we have any callers at this time?
No, Mayor, we do not have any callers at this time.
All right, so let's go ahead, and before we take a motion, does any council have any consent agenda items that they would like to pull? Councilor Waters?
Yeah, Mayor Bagley, thank you. I'd like to pull items 8B and C, or I'm sorry, C and D.
C and
Items
D.
9, C and D.
Mayor,
Yep.
my apologies. It looks like just after I stopped sharing that screen, we got somebody in the waiting room.
And that's what I figured. So let's go ahead now. But anyone else want to pull anything other than C and D? All right, so we're not gonna, in the event that somebody calls in to talk about these items, let's go ahead and do first call, public invited to be heard. Let's start with the person who's on the line, but let's please not close it off. Okay, let's just keep it open till the end of this call.
Sure thing. All right. So for the caller ending in 414, you should be able to unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes. Caller 414. *6 to unmute. Please remember
In?
to, oh, hello.
Am I in?
You are in. You can go ahead and state your name and address for the record, and then you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Sharon O'Leary, 534 Emory Street. Mayor Bagley and council members, I just wanted to share some thinking about 2 agenda items, A and B. First, it's very exciting for downtown business to receive a grant for parklets to support business during this pandemic. What is concerning to me is that downtown does not already provide adequate parking. And with the removal of parking spaces for the parklets, it will cause increased parking issues. A downtown restaurant owner stated today in the paper, people around the country and specifically in Longmont are realizing that this is the most prime real estate and it shouldn't be used for cars, but rather for people. Well, where will the cars go? To subprime residential neighborhoods? An analogy would be if residential neighborhoods didn't believe trash was an issue and didn't support trash collection. What if we encouraged people to place their trash in downtown receptacles rather than dealing with the issue and displacing the problem? Second, your discussion on electric scooter companies. I just wanted to give you some insight. My daughter lived in Seattle for 6 years and we visited frequently. Scooters were the new litter in the city of Seattle. Scooters were discarded in streets, parks, neighborhoods, and creeks. They were everywhere. Once your honeymoon is over with the scooter company, whose problem is it? It becomes an enforcement issue. Cities do not have the resources to take on this job. We saw this problem again when we went to San Diego. Scooters are just discarded throughout the city. What I would really appreciate you doing is focusing on making downtown a pedestrian-friendly and a handicapped accessible place for all citizens. I so greatly appreciate your time and dedication to the citizens of Longmont, and thank you for what you do.
Thanks, Ms. O'Leary. All right, is there anybody else in line or the queue?
Nope, nobody else jumped in the queue.
All right, so we have been now 5 minutes. Nobody objects. We'll go ahead and close out first call, public invited to be heard, and let's move on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Martin.
Move the consent agenda minus B and C. Is that correct?
The chair will recognize that as a motion for the consent agenda, but instead of B and C, it's C and D, I believe.
Excuse me.
Right. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. It's been moved by Councilmember Martin and seconded by Councilmember Waters. The motion is to pass the consent agenda less 9C and 9D. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right. The consent agenda passes minus C and D. Let's go on to ordinances on second reading and public hearings on any matter. What we're going to do is we're going to this time take our 3-minute break. And let's go ahead and take if you're calling in for public hearing on item 10A, 10B, 10C, 10D, or 10E, please call in now because this is your chance. So we're going to take a 3-minute break and I'll dawdle and we'll be back in a second. Thanks, guys.
Just a reminder, folks, that if you want to join us for the public hearings coming up next, make sure that you mute the live stream and enter the meeting number on your screen and listen for the instructions on your telephone. We will call you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. Once again, just a quick reminder, if you're going to join us for to speak on our public hearings on any matter, make sure that you mute your live stream and enter the meeting ID when prompted on your telephone and listen for the instructions on your telephone. We will call you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number.
All right, are we back? That was a very long 3 minutes, closer to 5. All right, is anybody in the queue for second call or for public hearing on second reading of ordinances?
I do not have anyone in the queue so far.
All right, let's go ahead and close actually, let's leave it open. Just leave it open. All right, so let's go on to item 10A, ordinance 2021-22, a bill for an ordinance amending chapter 3 of the Longmont Municipal Code on personnel rules. There's no staff report. Anybody have any questions? If not, can I have a motion, please? I would move ordinance 2021-22.
Second.
All right, I made the motion. Dr. Waters seconded it. Seeing no further discussion or debate, all in favor of ordinance 2021-22 and its passage, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right. Ordinance
And Mayor,
2021
just
Yep.
for clarification, you're considering the public hearing, did you open and close those?
I said leave the call open, but we'll close the
Thank you.
public hearing on ordinance 2021-22. And
Thank
the
you.
motion passes unanimously. All right, let's go on to ordinance 2021-23, a bill for an ordinance amending chapter 14.04 of the Longmont Municipal Code on meter and water line maintenance for arterial right-of-way. Do we have a motion? There's no staff report, by the way.
Is it, we will have a hearing?
Well, there's nobody in the queue, so we'll close the hearing, but.
And I'll move
nobody's here.
ordinance 2021-23.
All right, all in favor, say
Second.
aye. It's been moved by Dr. Waters, seconded by Councilmember Martin. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries unanimously. Let's go on to ordinance 2021-24, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the city of Longmont to lease the real property known as Vance Brand Municipal Airport Hangar Parcel H50 to Gail Shipper. We'll close the public hearing. There is not a staff report. Do we have a motion, Councilmember Peck?
I move 2021-24.
All right.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Peck, seconded by Dr. Waters. Councilmember Christensen.
This refers to the amending the, oh, no, I'm sorry. Never mind. It's later in the day.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry, Councilmember.
Oh, yes, I wanted to ask a question. This is to both D and E have to do with amending the lease from 20 to 30 years. Is that correct?
Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Christensen, Dave Slater, Airport Manager. That's correct.
Okay, so in this lease, which now extends it by 30%, do we keep the same rate, or is there some incremental movement upward? In other words, are we losing 30% of our rental?
Mr. Slater, I'm gonna
Did
let
you
take
get,
that one.
David, did you catch that?
Should I repeat it?
He's
I
had.
think
Just
he's-
wondering if there's a mechanism for increasing the rent over the course of 30 years, or if it stays exactly the same for 30 years.
There's a mechanism. I'm looking to find it. I think he can't hear us right now.
Oh, okay.
We've increased rates before in the middle of their 20-year lease.
There is
I
a
apologize,
mechanism
I'm
though
back.
for doing that in the
David,
agreement.
David, can you hear us now?
I can now.
Can you go over the rental increase in this per year?
The
How we-
CPI.
The CPI increase, can you go over that?
So the current CPI for 2021 is at 2.7% increase over the
Okay.
previous year's rate.
Okay, thank you. That explains it. I just didn't want us to be locked into the same rate for 30 years. That's seems like a pretty bad deal for the taxpayers of Longmont. Thank you.
And Mayor and Councilmember Christensen, each year, those leases have that built-in CPI. So whatever the CPI is for the previous year is what it will be for that following year. So in the event that it goes to zero or negative, we never go down. It stays the same, and any increase, then we go up.
Okay, thank you very much for explaining that, David. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor, I believe, for ordinance 2021-24, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the city of Longmont to lease the real property known as Vance Brand Municipal Airport hangar parcel to Gail Shipper. Who made that motion? It was Councilmember Peck and seconded by Councilmember Waters. Is that accurate?
Correct.
All in favor? Oh, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries unanimously. Ordinance 2021-25, a bill for an ordinance approving the First Amendment to the Vance Brand Municipal Airport Parcel H14-B lease. We're going to close the public hearing at this time. Do we have a motion? All right, I'll move ordinance 2021-25.
Second.
Second. Yeah.
All right, I made the motion. Councilmember Christensen seconded it. Seeing no further discussion or debate, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right. Motion carries unanimously. Let's move on to ordinance 2021-26, a bill for an ordinance approving the First Amendment to the Vance Brand Municipal Airport hangar parcel NHT2 lease. We're going to go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of ordinance 2021-26.
Second,
Who seconded that?
I did.
All right. It's been
Marcia.
moved. Thank you, Councilmember Martin. It's been moved by Dr. Waters, seconded by Councilmember Martin. And at this time, just go ahead and turn off the queue. There's no more public hearings or people won't be allowed to speak. It's all been closed out. So all in favor of ordinance 2021-26, say aye.
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 I was an aye as well. Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries unanimously. Let's move on to the items removed from the consent agenda. Councilmember Waters, resolution 2021-40. Why don't you go ahead and state your comments or ask your questions, please?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Bagley. I'll make one editorial comment, and then I do have some questions for, I suppose it's for Dan Eman, and I know Dan's logged into the meeting. The editorial comment would be this. In both Times Call and the Longmont Leader, I read articles about what's on tonight's agenda. I read one article in both publications about scooters, and I read one in at least one of the two periodicals about parklets. I didn't read anything in either publication, and maybe I just missed it and it was there, about these two items, 8C and D, on the agenda. So if I missed it, my bad. But if I didn't, it's a curiosity to me that given the scrutiny and the narrative and the energy and the concerns about policing and what policing means community by community across the country, that our residents wouldn't have had a chance to read about these items. Now, I know this is a story that's been told. I don't think it can be told often enough. What's happening here with decriminalizing homelessness and substance related issues, and how we are responding in ways here that are unlike so many other communities. It's not unique, but it's unusual. So with that kind of editorial comment, I do have a couple of specific questions for Dan that are, I think, everything that I'm curious about is in Exhibit 2. And it would start, Dan, which is the amended statement of work. In both the statement of work for both items, but we're dealing with 8C, there's a very specific change in language, deleting the word police officer and substituting the word law enforcement officer in terms of identifying who is involved in responding to incidents as they occur. But any background you can provide on the rationale for the change in that language?
Sure, Dr. Waters, Mayor Bagley, members of council. My name is Dan Eman. I'm the Assistant Public Safety Chief for the city. Now, I think what it really does is it kind of speaks to the changing nature of the entire discussion around these topics. You know, when we started this 4 or 5 years ago, it was a very specific thing that the country was talking about. What's happened in the last 4 or 5 years, especially with the kind of the national level discussions, is it's broadened tremendously. So we're not just talking about a police officer. This could be, you know, a sheriff's officer. It's everybody's looking at doing this now. So we have to change the way we talk about everything. It's being widely embraced now, whereas before, 4 or 5 years ago, we were relatively unique. And certainly, like you mentioned, it's not unique anymore, but we're different in what we do. And it's good to see that, you know, a lot more agencies and places are looking at these kind of things because they absolutely do work.
So following, that's a great setup for my next question. In section 3.19, there's a specific reference to a third-party evaluator. Could you talk just about who employs the third-party evaluator? And listed there is some criteria, I think, is how I should view that, for determining program effectiveness. Just talk about who employs the third-party evaluator for the statewide initiative and the relationship of those criteria to the evaluation.
Sure. So the state, the Office of Behavioral Health has contracted an independent evaluator. And that evaluator is tasked with a pretty significant job, really. There's four lead or pre-arrest diversion sites around the state. There's Longmont, there's Denver, there's Alamosa, and there's Pueblo. And, you know, those are pretty diverse communities, right? So this is a significant challenge. And they're trying to figure out how you can evaluate 4 very different communities with one set of criteria, and something that really hasn't been done before. So this pre-arrest diversion thing is really new. You know, Seattle started it not even 10 years ago now. So it's so new, and we're trying to figure out how do we evaluate it. And all of those criteria or, you know, data they're asking us to gather have changed over time as we kind of in the diversion community are really trying to figure out how do we even evaluate this stuff? What are we really even looking at? So we decided when we got our first grant, it's in our best interest. We really want to know what's effective in our community. So we hired our own outside evaluator that's evaluating our program specific to the city of Longmont, because we do things differently. We integrate our co-responder program with our diversion program, with our Angel program, with our community health program. They're all backed by public safety case managers. Nobody else does that. So we wanted to make sure we're getting an independent look at what we do that we can also compare with what the state's evaluator does and try to make good decisions with how we're using grant funding and city funding.
Just one more narrative kind of editorial comment, and that is that's the effective use of an external evaluator, right? To accelerate and inform the learning process, so you get smarter faster. And so good on the state and good on our department for reaching out and inviting in an external evaluator to evaluate what we're doing to get smarter faster as we go along. The only other question I would have in terms of the statement of work is just any explanation in terms of the performance measures on the last page, page 8 of 8. As you look at it, it's like trying to get clear on what are those measures, I assume for the statewide program.
Yeah, and it varies program to program, right? So if we're talking about co-responder, it's going to be different than LEAD, our pre-arrest diversion. So when we're talking about co-responder programs, we're really talking about mental health crisis related issues. So what we're really trying to do there is remove those from the criminal justice system as much as we possibly can. So we're trying to figure out how many times are we avoiding unnecessary emergency holds to the hospital? How many times are we taking people to the correct destination the first time? Can we take people directly to, you know, an inpatient facility? Can we take people directly to a crisis center without any of the other stops in between? We're trying to figure out, have we effectively trained the rest of our patrol officers? We're trying to figure out how many connections can we make resource-wise with everybody else involved in the incident, because we don't stop at the crisis. So we bring a police officer, a clinician, and a paramedic to every co-responder call. And it doesn't stop there. Most of their work is done afterwards. They do an incredible amount of follow-up work. So if we see you one day when you're having the worst day you've had, we're going to come back the next day to make sure, do you have connections? Do you have resources? Are you able to make those connections? And if you're not, we will help you make those and continue to follow up to make sure that we don't see you again. That's the ideal scenario, right? And certainly COVID has driven business significantly up. On the pre-arrest diversion side, the concept is similar, but a lot longer term in nature. You know, we're dealing with the we're dealing with substance use, the decades of addiction sometimes that isn't going to go away overnight. That's an incredibly difficult thing to try to measure. So performance evaluations are really trying to understand, are there charges that make sense to divert or not? In our case, that doesn't necessarily matter to us. What we want to do is get somebody into a case management program and not focus too much on the initial interaction with the patrol officer. Our patrol officers are extremely good at understanding what the moment means. They know when somebody's ready, they know when they're not. We trust them. So we try to figure out performance-wise there, what is the intervention that matters? And we fall back on our belief that personal individual relationships matter. How many times can our peer case managers go to where people are? How many times does it take for us to just be there with them? And we're trying to figure out what are those interventions? And it's incredibly challenging, but we always fall back on what we believe in and what we think we're the best at, which is building individual relationships, trusting our public safety frontline personnel, and just being there for people when they need us. That's our philosophy, and that is what has worked for us.
Well, those are my questions. If other council members have questions, I'll be quiet. Otherwise, I'll make a motion.
Councilmember Hidalgo Farron.
Thank you. So I do have a question around, so this is a state pilot program. Is that correct?
One is and one isn't. So the
Okay.
lead sites are designated as a pilot program. The co-responder programs are more long-term.
Okay. Okay. And then how long is this? Because we are getting state funding and it is for our participation, I believe, in the pilot program. Is that correct? Or is
It gets a little, so yes, and it gets really kind of crazy when we're talking about funding, but the answer to your question is yes, but I think it's important that you guys understand that the city has put in long-term money into these programs. We have, out of all of the staff and that we have in these programs, the city has funded about 1/3 of them on an ongoing basis. So I think that's important for you guys to understand that has happened, but the rest of it, you're right, is mostly state. We do have some federal grant funding in there and a little bit of private foundations in there too, but the majority, yes, you're right, it is state funding from the Office of Behavioral Health.
Okay. And then when is the pilot program expected to expire?
Another good question. And we're kind of figuring that out as we go too. The initial thought was it was a 5-year grant cycle that we got in 2018. So we're coming right up on it, but we've already gotten an extension letter, an extension award on the lead grant from Office of Behavioral Health already. So they have understood we can't figure out how to measure this thing effectively enough to know whether or not we need to get rid of sites or not. So we know we're going to extend it a couple more years already with I guess you can still call it a pilot. There's still only 4 sites on the lead side. There's like 23 in the co-responder side.
Okay. And it seems, so I think about, it's not necessarily a program, it's more like a culture within the department and how folks conduct themselves with the community and how they interact with the community. So it goes above and beyond, I think that idea of program is kind of a misnomer. So because it's really a change in interactions with the community and also destigmatizing mental health and addiction. And I think those are 2, I heard you talk about those pieces, and those are really important to mention and highlight, because I think as more folks, are experiencing their own problems with addiction or mental illness, that they know that there are supports in the community. And I think that is really essential. I'm going to go back to my daughter, who's now 22, but when she was 13, there was very little out there for us. And we felt so alone. And it was very, just some of her interactions she had in the school setting and with officers, that she felt very, and it was very criminalized. It just felt like there was a deficit. And so I think, we're changing that narrative, that these are not deficits. We need to be supporting our community in these areas. And so, I greatly appreciate what the city is doing and the commitment they have to mental health, mental illness, and drug addiction, and overcoming those. So, I really want to, I think as money starts, as program or the pilot starts expiring and the state maybe wants to pull out money, I'd want to know, is there talk in legislation, or have you heard anything about making this more permanent and spreading it out statewide? And is this something that we as council members can be lobbying and advocating for, to see that the state will continue to fund these types of programs in our public safety?
Well, I think first, I appreciate everything you said. I completely agree. It's a culture change of how we do business, and it's part of who public safety is now. I completely agree with that. That was very well said. And I think it's a little hard to read the state legislature right now. I think Sandy would probably agree with that. It's an interesting session this year. We've heard a little bit of, and we do every year, of talk about the LEAD program specifically. We're a little more solid on the co-responder side, but on the LEAD side, that's the one that I think, because of the challenge in bringing numbers to an evaluation for a diversion program related to substance use, that's the challenging one. And of course, council reaching out to any sort of state legislature on that would be fantastic. And we do try, and we have tried we have successfully over the past several years, from a city side, moved a position at a time in a measured way to get these positions into the city permanently, because I think it is a city philosophy. It isn't something that we no longer believe in, or we're not going to believe in long term. But I think, to answer your question specifically, it's the LEAD programs that I think, if anything's going to go away, that would be those. That's also the largest grant we have. And any influence all of you would have in that would be wonderfully appreciated.
So specifically on your budget questions, to Dan's point, we've evaluated some positions we've had that were vacant. We've converted those positions over to, I think we did a couple of those last year, Dan, or is it the year before last? So we do that. We're going to evaluate in the budget process every year, understanding timing on grant, what that looks like. But Rob and I have also had other conversations about taking what we have and what we know, and also identifying other gaps that we're seeing, because as we continue to evolve, I think as an organization, we're going to have to continue to evolve in this. But, I can say I've personally seen these folks deal with individuals in our building in certain situations, and it is a difference. I mean, it's as basic as you see the officers pull back and the clinicians move forward, and it changes the whole dynamic of the interaction. And so those are things we will be talking about in our budget discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Martin, and then hopefully Dr. Waters will make a motion.
Yeah, when you're talking about the state not knowing how far to continue and continuing year by year, I understand that each of these co-responder situations is unique, because every person is unique. But are there metrics about outcomes in qualifying situations that you have, and are you able to measure the difference that this mode of responding makes?
We do, and we produce an annual report every year, and I'd be happy to get it back to you guys so you can take a look at it. I think the biggest measurable thing we have is the interim report that our evaluator did on the LEAD side, and it really shows a difference in engagement on public safety services before LEAD engaged with them and after, and it's showing about a 60% reduction, which is enormous. That's the biggest that we've seen anywhere. On the
Reduction
co-responder
in-
side, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, reduction in what?
In the amount of times public safety sees them. So we're talking summonses, arrests, those kinds of things. But on the co-responder side, we really try to measure, it's kind of hard to measure a negative. It's kind of hard to measure how many times we think a police officer would have done something if we weren't there. So we try to measure the positive outcomes. The amount of times that the co-responder team was there, that nobody was arrested, nobody was hurt, and we had a successful outcome. So we try to measure it in that way.
Thank you again.
All right, great. Dr. Waters, you want to make a motion, please?
Yeah, I will. I hope we all get a chance to read about this part of the agenda in tomorrow's local publications. And with that, I'll move approval of resolution 2021-40.
I'll second it.
It's been moved by Dr. Waters, seconded by Councilmember Hidalgo Faring. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, I'm assuming you want to make a motion for resolution 2021-41 as well, Dr. Waters?
I will. If Dan, he's probably made sufficient distinctions between, the reason I pulled the second one off was just to get clear on the distinctions between and the similarities between the lead and co-responder program. Just in 30 seconds, Dan, can you reinforce or highlight that? And then I'll make my motion.
Sure. So the co-responder program, that's a dedicated frontline response thing. So we have a clinician, a police officer, and a paramedic 7 days a week that are dispatched to mental health crisis calls. The lead is more of a philosophy in a program where we have public safety case managers that take referrals from patrol officers for people with substance use issues that are entangled with the criminal justice system that we want to try to remove from the criminal justice system. That's the 30-second difference.
Got it. Evaluating prevention is the most difficult, performance to evaluate. With that, I'm going to move approval of resolution 2021-41. And thanks for your
Second.
service.
It's been moved by Dr. Waters and seconded by, I believe, it was Councilmember Christensen. All right, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to care in the grades. The chair recognizes Councilmember Martin and Councilmember Hidalgo Faring for wanting to second the motion. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries unanimously. All right, let's get this through the consent agenda and the items on second reading. Let's move on to general business. Item 12A, resolution 2021-47, a resolution of Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city, the Colorado Department of Transportation for grant funding to support the Longmont Parklet project for public spaces. I believe we have Kimberly McKee and Phil Greenwald here. Where's Phil? Phil, you here?
I am,
There
thank
he
you.
is. All righty.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Phil Greenwald, Transportation Planning Manager with the City of Longmont. Tonight, we have pulled a consent item, much to the chagrin of a couple of our staff members. But we did want to pull this consent item and make it give you a little bit more background and some information so that you had more understanding of kind of what's been going on and why we've moved on to this item. So our staff, working with LDDA staff, Kimberly McKee specifically, have done a lot of work over the last 4 to 5 months, put a lot of work into trying to get something that's a little bit different than the lane closures that we had last year and addresses some of the concerns that were out there, because from what we heard back from citizens and businesses and all sorts of folks about those. So as you probably know, I mean, we definitely see continued indoor distancing requirements. They're continuing, and we don't know when they're actually going to end. So this is pretty important during our spring and summer here to have those outdoor amenities and those outdoor spaces available for folks. So Kimberly McKee, our executive director for LDDA, is here, and she's going to provide a short presentation for us. And Tyler Stamey is also here from engineering and help answer any safety questions that you have regarding the parklets. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kimberly. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Phil, so much. I don't know, yeah, wonderful. Mayor and council, thank you so much for having me here today. As we all know, our entire town was hit hard by the pandemic. Downtown was hit particularly hard. Restaurants are our anchors, and with full closures, capacity issues, and that type of thing, we really did struggle through COVID. You could, next slide, please. Last year, I want to thank you for helping with the lane closure in each direction. If you remember, it did have a rocky start. When we put down really old barricades, it did look like a construction zone, and we got a lot of bad feedback. One of the things that we were able to do was really embrace our creative district and our creative community. We worked really strongly with the Firehouse Arts Center, who did Summer in the Streets. Every Saturday, the closures came alive with artists and booths and musicians and painting the barricades. It really gave the I think the entire town and everyone who visited it a sense of hope and a sense of moving forward during the pandemic. We had certain areas of that closure that were utilized very well by businesses, but we did have others that remained unutilized. Maybe the kind of business or the kind of business that they did not warrant it very well into moving into that private lane. Some people loved it, some people hated it, as you know, as those things go. So it was great. We felt like it was very positive and what we needed at the time. The community embraced it. I think a huge bonus of single lanes were slower speeds and a quieter Main Street. Yeah, next slide would be great. We did do a community survey and a business survey. We had over 50 businesses answer the survey, but we also had several meetings involving them. For our community members, we had over 1,650 people that were answering those community feedback. Last year, of our business community, about 50% thought it was positive or somewhat positive, the lane closure, and then 50% were either neutral or did not think it was positive. So it was a pretty mixed bag. Of our community members, 67% of the respondents said that they went and enjoyed the downtown space. 72% said that they were very satisfied or satisfied with the solution that we put forth last year. But knowing that we need to balance the needs of everyone, we really did ask our business owners, after having discussions and putting out options in small group meetings, it seemed like parklets was the perfect balance to be able to allow those that could avail of the outdoor space to continue to have it, and to continue hearing the needs of our community. Our community said that they loved the outdoor space, pandemic or not, that it was something that they absolutely enjoyed. Of our businesses, about 80% were either satisfied or somewhat satisfied with the use of parklets. And in the community, when we asked them how likely or somewhat likely they would be to use them, about 80% said that they would give them a try. Next slide, please. We did aggregate all of the open comments to kind of see what the major trends were. If of the business owners, they liked parklets. Again, there are some concerns about parking, but much smaller than those that supported it. And overall, within our entire parking system, it will only take out 30 spaces. So it's certainly not a huge significant amount. In our community feedback, we had 130 people in their comments say that they liked the parklets. We had 133 people say just close the whole lane. They liked that again. You could see that other folks liked outdoor spaces. I think the biggest worry were kind of the safety and the noise, the smell, and the traffic that would go with it. Next slide. So for the parklets, we really looked at starting with 30 parklets within the system. Each parklet will take up a parking space. It'll be about 5 feet by 20 feet long. We started where those spaces were most highly used last year. So that's how we started and figured out where. Some folks decided that they didn't want them, so we talked to businesses independently. We're hoping to have them designed and built locally. It's much easier to transport. Ordering parklets and having them shipped is very expensive. So to help our local economy and to have our local businesses that use them provide the seating and the amenity that go on those. By using the parklets, it does allow for parking spaces to be in some places and those businesses to the side. Next slide, please. So when we look at funding, each parklet will be about $10,000. We are looking to build them so they can come out year after year. They could be moved in different locations as we're seeing that need. The LDDA would put forth $150,000. A CDOT grant would fund the other $150,000. And to really help with that sense of safety, we will be putting water-filled barricades on the other side between the parklets and the traffic to add to that sense of safety. And that would be additional $40,000. I would just really like to thank Phil Greenwald and Tyler and Atara, who really helped put this CDOT grant together and did an amazing job and have been so great being available and researching different solutions. They've been really wonderful. I'm going to turn it over to Phil to talk a little bit more about the grant.
Well, I think at this point, we can certainly turn it over to the city council for any questions you might have on that IGA that's in front of you tonight.
Councilor Martin?
Yeah, just it sounded like the parklets were going to cost $300,000 and it was going to be half from LDDA and half from the state. Where does the extra $40,000 for the barriers come from?
That's a great question. What we're planning to do at this point in time is to use the ARPA funding from the COVID relief package that was recently passed and use that to help purchase those barricades. And those will be for future use as well. So we'll be able to use those into the future. They're not a one-time only like the last barricades were from last year.
Thank you.
Good answer, Phil.
Councilmember Christensen. We don't need comments for the peanut gallery, Harold. No, just kidding.
Oh, I thought you were referring to me as the peanut gallery.
Well, I can do that afterwards. Yes, we can do that too. There's room for everybody here in the gallery.
I really do think this is a good idea. I've been trying to interest people in this sort of thing for the last 7 years because Louisville's done this for at least a decade. And sorry about the ringing. I do think this is a wonderful idea. I do think that for 30 parklets, $300,000 at $10,000 a piece is a lot. You know, when Louisville started this, it was they got a lot of volunteers, they got a lot of free or low cost supplies from Home Depot. I think we need to talk to them because they've already done this. They know how to store them. They know how to build it. They know how to operate this stuff. We don't need to start from scratch all over again. They do exactly this every year and they have for quite some time. So I really would like us to try to not spend $300,000 for basically pallets that have a little bit more hardening on them. And I do think we can do a little bit better than that, but I think it's a wonderful idea. I think I am concerned also about what Sharon O'Leary mentioned, which was my concern last year when we did this, that people who are disabled or elderly or have trouble walking will not be able to use this. And we already have enough trouble parking downtown, but we're only doing this for the summer. And I think we'll work our way through it. I think last year, everybody was kind of delighted with the outcome of what downtown turned into. It was very pleasant. Louisville, of course, just closes off their entire downtown, but it's much smaller and it's not a state highway and it's a different situation here. But I would just like us not to recreate the wheel. Thanks.
So if I can jump in real quick with Kimberly too, one of the difference I think in the design, it does overlap onto the curb, so it is more accessible, correct, Kimberly? So there's some accessibility pieces in this, but because it is a state highway and you do have cars moving on that, I think it really creates a different situation in terms of how you build it and what you build based on the situation it is, which is distinctly different than what Louisville is doing. And that's part of the conversation we had.
I just meant what Sharon O'Leary was mentioning with parking and the effect it's going to have on the adjacent neighborhoods and the effect of people being able to get there in the first place.
Oh, okay.
And Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Christensen, I have been in contact with Louisville and we've talked with several people. One of the things that we're doing with ours is we're building them all out of aluminum or Trex decking. And that is because we've learned from other folks that have done this, the wood deteriorates very quickly. Not to mention wood has increased 400% since the pandemic. And so by being able to use aluminum and decking, as we take them in and out and store them, the lifespan of these parklets is expected to be 10 to 20 years. And talking to my colleagues in Louisville, they're certainly not getting that out of theirs. And she said theirs are now at about 12,000 per when they build them. So we do feel that this is probably as good as we're going to get, and they're going to be good for much longer than wood if you take it down and put it back up.
All right, great. My question is, will this reduce the 4 lanes of traffic on Main Street?
It will not, Mayor.
Okay, and I'm all for it. If we can enhance shopping and mobility downtown and maintain traffic, I think that's awesome. Don't know how that works, but you guys, it's magic, baby, magic. Go for it. All right, Councilmember Christensen.
One thing I forgot to mention, it might be good to add some extra bike racks, because that would encourage people who can to bicycle downtown, and although they're not allowed to bicycle on the sidewalk, they can bicycle downtown.
You'll be glad to hear, Councilmember Christensen, that in our last grant that was in the same program for wayfinding, we did get an additional 30 bicycle racks with that grant. So that's going downtown as well. So.
All right, great. Councilmember Martin.
Yeah, just quickly, there's still, even though there's not a parklet in every parking space, so it's not the full lane being closed off. There's still a zone where, outside the zone, there are no parklets, and inside the zone, there are parklets. And we have these water-filled barriers. Is there going to be any traffic calming measures at the ends of the zone so that people understand they need to slow down because there are people closer to the traffic? I guess that's for Phil.
Yeah, I might turn that over to Tyler, but just to kind of take a first crack at it, we are talking about possibly adding some signage to possibly slow down folks, or ask people to slow down and realize that there are more pedestrians during these spring and summer months. But I don't know, Tyler, if you have anything to add to that or any thoughts on that?
Aaron, Councilmember Martin, Tyler Stabey, Longmont Transportation Engineering Administrator. We're looking at a couple of different signage options, as Phil mentioned, to hopefully provide some notification that, hey, there are people out closer to the street and in traffic. We mentioned we'll have the barricades between traffic and the parklets as well. So that's what we're looking at this point.
Yeah, the barricade should provide a fairly good visual clue that you need to slow down, because those will be closer to traffic than a parked vehicle technically, but it'll be far enough away that it's not going to be an impedance, but it'll definitely be a visual effect.
Okay, so you're sort of not reducing the number of lanes, but you are, in a sense, narrowing the lane.
We're just providing more activity closer to the lane that people are going to have to, people are already pretty aware when they're driving in the downtown area because of the increased activity, pedestrian, bicycle, and other activity that's down there. So this will bring more activity closer to the parked vehicle or to the vehicles. So we're going to make sure that we're protecting that activity, but also that will slow down traffic, we believe.
Okay, thank you, Phil.
All right, can we have a motion for resolution 2021-47?
I move adoption.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Martin, second by Councilmember Peck. We've all asked and had our say. Anybody else want to say anything? Seeing nothing, all in favor of resolution 2021-47, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, resolution 2021-47 carries unanimously. Let's go on to 12B, discussion of allowing electric scooter companies to operate in Longmont. Phil, where'd you go? There you are. You're back. All right. If you would like to go ahead and share your presentation.
Sure. Thank you again, Mayor and council members. Phil Greenwald again, Transportation Planning Manager with the City of Longmont. Tonight, we'd like to talk a little bit about we'd like to ask you a bit about scooters, electric scooters in Longmont. you've asked us in previous sessions about future thinking and where we are with thinking about the future in transportation, and this is it, part of it. E-micromobility is what we're calling this, and what it is actually called. It really does affect the overall transportation system, so we're appreciating that. Just wanted to go over some of these issues and talk a little bit about what we already know about electric scooters and electric scooter companies. You've heard some tonight from citizens who've called in. You've also received a couple emails, I believe, from folks stating their feelings about electric scooters. But I think generally we have an idea that electric scooters are these ones that are placed, you know, in Denver, in the Denver situation, and maybe in Seattle as well. These were kind of dropped into cities without any warning. And that was not acceptable, quite frankly. So I think the scooter companies have definitely taken a step back. And now we've been approached by, now it's been 3 with this article going into the newspaper. We've now been approached by 3 different scooter companies at least to ask about the possibility of locating these scooters in the city of Longmont. So again, I think you have a pretty good idea of what's going on with the scooters, how they operate. You basically, there's a code, or there's a QR code on the scooter itself. It's a low cost way of getting a ride, it does provide those kind of quicker trips across town, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Next slide, please. So the reason why we're coming to you tonight is really that we've run into some pretty divisive, it's been a pretty divisive issue with our city staff. And for that reason, we've not had a formal recommendation by staff to you tonight. And I'd want to apologize for that, but I think that's just the way some of these different discussions go and these different issues go. So this time we're really asking for your general direction on e-scooters in the city. And if you do agree that they should be allowed in the city, then we would provide you with actual language, the exact text, as part of likely a study session where we'd go through the text with you and make sure that you were good with the text before we went up into first and second reading for an ordinance. So next slide, please. Again, we included this in the council communication for you and for the public to kind of read over. This is just a quick list of pros and cons. I think you understand basically all of these different issues. Really the pros that we've really kind of targeted or keyed on is that low cost mobility option and the cleaner mode of travel, quite frankly, with the electric motors that these things have. And the technology is really increasing. And so we're seeing that the technology of these scooters, at least the companies we've talked to, they're able to restrict travel in specific areas, or they can slow down the scooters in certain areas as well. So they can restrict the speed on in certain areas. And what they do is each scooter has a GPS unit tied to it. So at the end of each day, there's somebody that the scooter company hires, or a group of people, that go out and find these scooters and bring them back and place them back into more of an orderly pickup location for each morning of travel. So the idea that these will get thrown around and thrown away is certainly possible, but the scooter companies have come up with a lot of ways in the last couple of years to decrease that by having people take pictures when they park them and their rides, so that and also with the GPS being able to find them. So those things are happening. The cons are obviously that there's increased injuries. We see this in cities across the United States that have allowed these into the cities. There's obviously the increase of conflicts as well. The idea that you're adding a different mode, so on top of bicycles and pedestrians and you know, people with their private scooters, people with skateboards, we're adding a conflict, another mode of conflict. And typically the benefits for the electric travel option here that we're providing is really that it typically replaces a bicycle trip or a walk trip, which obviously has no or very few effects to the greenhouse gas and the the general climate than these do. So, and also we'll talk about the short scooter life. You know, these do tend to get abused a little bit more than you know, if you own them. I think that's obvious. And then just creating sidewalk hazards by placing these in the sidewalk when they're parked and making sure that a person parks them correctly. So there's a lot of things that go with that. One thing that the scooter companies have offered is that they will offer a free helmet rental, or a free helmet actually as part of the rental of the scooter. You have to go pick it up, or it gets shipped to you. So it's not immediately a free helmet, but they do offer that for future rides. So next slide. So this is really our question tonight, and I'd really like to open it up and hear your comments. Shall city staff move forward with an ordinance to support e-scooter companies operating in Longmont? Very basic question, but a lot of nuance to it. So we want to certainly hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
All right, but before we launch into this, are they going to be located downtown, or is this all over the city, Phil?
This is going to be citywide. So they'll be placed all in different areas in the city. And as the scooter companies kind of watch people's usage, they'll determine where they kind of set these things up for the next day based on the usage.
And then next, we currently have an ordinance where we don't allow bike riding downtown, and scooters and bike riding are very similar. Is city staff going to recommend we undo that, or so we're going to not allow bikes, but we are going to allow scooters downtown?
No, we're not going to allow scooters in the dismount zones along sidewalks on Main Street with scooters as well as bicycles. Correct.
Okay, so the idea is, are we going to allow scooters to travel around the city, and we will still continue to disallow scooters and bicycling in the dismount zone, correct?
The dismount zones on the sidewalks on Main Street, correct, between those 3rd and 6th.
All right, perfect. But let's go ahead and, given the parameters of the discussion, let's go with Councilmember Christensen. Actually, let's go with Councilmember Peck, because she hasn't said anything tonight. Then we're going to go with Councilmember Martin. Then we're going to go with Councilmember Christensen. Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Thank you for that update, Phil. I do have a couple of questions. When you mentioned the GPS so that the scooter company knows where these scooters are, who's going to go pick them up? Is it going to be city staff? Is it going to be?
No, it's Councilmember Peck. The scooter company takes care of everything with the scooters. So we don't have the city isn't responsible for them in any way, shape, or form. Kind of like our shelter contract, where we have those bus shelters around town that have advertising. This is kind of in the same vein of that model of the private scooter company wants to make some money off of people using the scooters. So we're basically opening up our rights of way to the scooter companies to profit. And that's the same thing that we did with the shelter companies. So that same model where they have employees who pick these up and relocate them every morning and make sure that they are picking them out of any kind of strange places they might be. But before, there was not a GPS component to these scooters, and now there is, because I really do need to find each scooter at the end of the day.
Exactly. Okay. For me anyway, and this could just be my ignorance, because I haven't seen them used as anything other than recreational. So, to put them in our multimodal category as a cleaner mode of travel, it isn't really something that they're going to go shopping and have the ability to take groceries or retail merchandise home with them. There's no carrier on these scooters. Whereas a bicycle, you can use it as a mode of travel. So that is one issue that I have. The other thing is there an age limit on who can operate a scooter?
My understanding from the scooter companies, Councilmember Peck, is that it's people over the age of 18. And I believe you have to have a credit card as well. So there's two things that you need. And I think that they're trying to work in a low income aspect of that. So you don't need necessarily to have a credit card for some of these companies, but you could get a voucher for a lower price point on the scooter usage. So there is a low income piece of this. I don't have enough information to share with you tonight, but I can certainly bring that back if you'd like to hear more about how that works.
Yes, actually I would. The other thing is education. I don't know what scooter companies have been reaching out to you, but I think that it would be very important that they have an educational component up on how to use the scooter in relation to other modes of recreation or transportation, say on bike trails, etc. Because there seems to be, anyway, the scooters that I've seen when I'm out cycling, it's kind of a hot dog mentality with a lot of people, and they can be very dangerous. So I just think education, whether it's bicycles or scooters or whatever, is to make sure that people understand they're sharing the road, they're sharing the bike path. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let the record reflect that Councilmember Peck is a hot dog. I'm just kidding. All right, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Phil, a short question and a longer comment. The question is, what is the expected benefit financially to the city? I mean, you have these companies offering to come in and place these scooters and do the maintenance and stuff. Does the city pay for it, or does the city gain a cut of the revenue?
Typically, these scooter companies have offered a small cut of the revenue, just the same as the shelter companies do. So the scooter companies are offering a small slice of that in order to operate within the city. Again, I don't have the details of a contract in front of me, but I can certainly work those details from the different scooter companies and get that to us as we talk about whether we want to. This is really about whether we want scooters in the town or not. But if we hear yes, we'll certainly bring back some of those details. But if we hear no, we won't follow up with these companies.
Okay, so I don't have a particularly strong opinion, but that seems like a good time to listen to the public. So when the calls and letters started coming in, the tally is that everything I received was a negative, except for two that were under certain conditions, we could do this. So let's start with the conditions. They were not on sidewalks anywhere. They needed to be on the bike paths or treated like a bicycle, which means that they could be a vehicle in a lane that was built for automobiles. You can take the scooter onto the street, but don't have them on the sidewalks. And I agree with that. And the two sources of that comment were a young millennial and the cyclists organization that thought that they would be okay if they were essentially treated like another a lower, scarier bicycle.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, Councilmember Martin, that bicycles are allowed on sidewalks today. Both electric and
the scooter.
Right, both electric bicycles and regular bicycles.
Yeah, and except in the dismount zone.
Right.
But I having experienced them, because my daughter lived on 17th Street downtown near 16th Street Mall and in Denver, and it was incredibly hazardous because people think that it'd be like the scooter that you put together out of old 2x4s when you were a kid, and a roller skate, right? And you could just get on it and it would do its, you'd be able to control it. And these things are crazy, and there would be people that thought they could get on and they would lose control and they'd be veering all around, and they were trying so hard to figure out what their scooter was doing that they didn't even look to see who was around them on the street. And it was quite terrifying. I find it real problematic. And the other observation that I got from one of the con letter persons who had really laid things out was that this is a want and not a need for the city, in the sense that the demographic it's aimed at doesn't really need help with the last mile, right? If you are young and athletic enough that you can get the hang of these scooters pretty easily, you could walk the last mile. Whereas they would be useless for families. They would be useless for elders because they're too dangerous. And those are the people that need help with the last mile. So I'm kind of a no, I guess. Listening to the public, I think I'm a no.
All right, so at this time, is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of the resolution? Is there anyone who wants to vote for it? Yes, and who would like to speak? All right, okay. Councilmember Christensen?
I have many of the same comments that both Councilwoman Peck and Councilwoman Martin have brought up, and particularly the comment of, people my age. I would love to get on a scooter, but I think that ship has sailed. I can't afford to break anything else. So this isn't really about whether we're going to allow e-scooters in town. There are already e-scooters and electric bikes and bicycles and various things. This is about whether we're going to allow two commercial companies to sell their services in town. And that's problematic. One of the letters I got today was from the inimitable Paul Tiger, who used the phrase left holding the bag, which is, I went to Los Angeles 2 years ago and these things were out by the beach. They're everywhere, abandoned in the sidewalk. You can hardly walk in certain areas of town because they're all over. So, companies pledge, people make many promises. And then after a month or so, they slack off until pretty soon we are left holding the bag for the liability, for the cleanup, for everything concerning this. And it's just it would be, to me, one more problem that the city has to deal with. I have no objection to people having e-scooters and electric bikes. I think are a terrific idea. Europe has had electric bikes for 100 years. And bicycles, I love, but none of these belong really on sidewalks, particularly where it's crowded. We need to be preferencing pedestrians, people on their foot, so that our pathways and our sidewalks are for people walking along with their kids and their dogs and their elderly relatives. They have a right to be safe and to be able to walk along at their leisure without looking over their shoulder. I, for instance, have had numerous people run into me with their skateboards, nearly breaking my ankle. I've had people nearly run into me with scooters and bikes. I can no longer hear well enough to know when someone is in back of me. So it doesn't do any good if they announce something. I can't hear them. And many people can't get out of their way even if they could hear them. Blind people can't hear them. They could walk along a path, but they couldn't find out, they wouldn't be able to get out of the way of these. I want our paths and our sidewalks to be safe for, regular people walking around. And as Councilwoman Peck said, these are not really a solution to the last mile, because as both councilwomen pointed out, you can't really load them up with anything like groceries or furniture or anything. They really won't carry anything except you. So I just don't think that, we already had our experiment with Zagster. These don't tend to work out too well. And we're not a big enough town, I think, to afford them much of a profit. So they'll begin to slowly abandon us in pretty short order. So I would rather see us just not venture into this. People can have e-scooters here right now, and they do. This is about a couple of commercial industries who probably have their hearts in the right place, but our experience has not really been awfully good. with people in Denver, people in Los Angeles, people in Seattle, people in New York, people everywhere. So
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and call on Dr. Waters. Then after Dr. Waters' comment, I just want to point out, no one here, I don't think wants this. So we could all talk and share our opinions, or we could just make a motion and move on and give staff direction that we don't want it. So, and save some time. So Dr. Waters?
Well, I'm going to vote no. I'll make the motion and I just want to make one comment. I'll make the motion to vote no on 2147. But here's the comment. Phil, you prefaced your presentation with expressed interest in discussing or learning more or engaging in conversation about the future of transportation. And I'm one of those who would like to do that. Personally, I would never have chosen this as the lead for that conversation, right? If you want to frame what the future of transportation is and get some robust image and then have a conversation about e-scooters, that's one thing. But to lead with this is not, I don't think is where we want to, how you want to bring us into a discussion about the future of transportation. So I am excited about that possibility. I'm not excited about e-scooters in Longmont. So I'm going to move, we vote no on resolution 2021-47.
Actually,
No.
I think you mean
Sorry.
12B, Dr. Waters. Basically, what the chair will, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry, on 12B.
Yep.
got it. I'm sorry. Yeah, I
Yep.
was looking through. Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
So the chair will take that motion to direct staff to not continue with the electric scooter exploration and implementation.
Thank you for the correction of my motion, Mayor
Hey,
Bagley.
it's rare that I have to correct you, Dr. Waters. So I mean, hey, everybody has a bad night. Everyone has a bad night. I've had like 90 of them the last couple of years. All right, so I'll second. All right, it's been moved by Dr. Waters and seconded by Councilmember Martin that we instruct Phil Greenwald and the city staff to not continue with the electric scooter option and continue things as they are, at least as far as electric scooters go. So having heard plenty of discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right, there you go. You have your direction.
Thank you for your direction.
That doesn't mean, and as we discussed before, Phil, that does not mean that this was a bad idea. It means you keep bringing us ideas. So we appreciate your brainstorming and we look forward to the next one. All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's go on to 12C, 2021 legislative bills recommended for city council position. Before we do that, I want to make sure that we address this prior to the mayor and council comments because pursuant to our rules, we're not allowed to. So I just want to open it for discussion again. Senate Bill 278, the RTD bill, I'd like Joan just to talk about the testimony today. But also I'd like to move that we reconsider council position last week. I'm not going to advocate we support it, but given that the Front Range Commuter Rail boards basically passed resolutions saying that they endorse the Northwest Rail option, does that move our position at all? That's it. Okay, there was not a second, so that's good. So Councilmember Peck, and I had committed to a couple of the state legislators that I would actually just bring it up. So I have fulfilled my obligation. Councilmember Peck, what happened today down at the Capitol?
Well, it was interesting. It was about Senate Bill 238 for the district for the rail. There was really not a lot of testimony. There were a few supporters and a couple of opposition, and actually there were three of us, Commissioner Claire Levy, City Councilman Aaron Brockett, and myself, who want to amend it because we actually think that we probably do need a district, but the bill as written has too many loopholes in it. There's not enough transparency, and there's no complete definition on the cost of it. Matt Jones is also, Commissioner Matt Jones is also in the position of wanting to amend it. Aaron Brockett spoke for council. I did not. I spoke for myself as a council member because I wanted to amend it, not to oppose it or support it in the fashion that it has been laid out for us. And the reason for that is that the authors of the bill stated that the district, if it was formed, there's nothing defined in it yet, nothing. And I have a problem with that, to say okay and support a district which we have to be part of and pay taxes into when the alignment has not been solidified yet, when the cost has not been determined. And if Amtrak does not get the funding they hope to get, what does that actually mean in the tax that they are going to ask us to pay? Also in the bill, it says along with the district tax, if there is any other tax, for example, if they need to build stations get private property, then we'd have to pay sales tax, use tax, et cetera, on top of our tax district tax, the 0.08% that they presented. So to me, those are all loopholes, which means that it gives this taxing authority way too much money with not enough transparency in the bill. So Mayor Bagley, do you want to make a motion to change our position, to amend and then support?
Well, I made the motion to reconsider, and it failed.
Oh,
for like a
okay.
second. So, but that's and so what everyone else knows, we also had an MCC meeting where all the mayors came together. We met with Representative Gray. He's one of the co-sponsors of the bill, and then Senator Winters. They weren't typical to everybody. You know, when I share my opinion, most people are pretty upset that I'm running contrary. But pursuant to how we voted, what I said is my opinion is that they need to fix the governance, meaning the governance body of the district was not very well in alignment with population centers. And so my point was, you know, and then also you need some type of commitment for Northwest Rail, because the only thing worse, I said, than paying for a train we never get is paying twice for a train that we never get. And so they weren't very happy with us not voting to other board members of the Front Range Passenger Rail called, expressed their disappointment. And my point was, personally, I said, option A, we would like rail going through Northwest. And if they can commit to that, I'm pretty sure this council would change our viewpoint. Next would be no train at all. Third would be, yeah, we vote and have a train and we pay for it twice and we don't get a train. So they weren't happy with our decision, but I think everybody understands where we stand. So Dr. Waters?
So I'm just trying to understand. A week ago, the motion was made. There was a majority of the council that voted, I thought, as I recall, to withdraw this bill. I remember expressing my own thoughts at the time. It felt like a chicken and an egg scenario then. It feels like a chicken and egg scenario now. How do you fix the bill? If our position is to withdraw the bill, then it ain't going to get fixed. Sometime between now and some future date when a new bill is introduced, maybe some group of people come together and work on what the fixes should have been in this bill. Or we do take a position to say we oppose pending amendments, or we monitor pending amendments, which is what we did with one of the other bills last week. Why we didn't do that with this one, I'm still puzzled about, because I don't know how you get the fixes in the bill if there isn't a bill to fix. So I'll listen.
That's the reason for my motion to reconsider that failed for a lack of second. But
you want to make it again? I'll second if that's the intent.
My intent was to reconsider and then monitor with amendments and encourage them to A, fix the governance, B, provide Northwest Rail. And one of the other things that I mentioned was, don't tax us. If we do this, we don't get the train, don't tax us in this district.
I guess I didn't understand, with all apologies and respect, I guess I didn't understand you were offering that as a motion. I would have seconded it as a motion.
But we'd have to reconsider. It's the first meeting after, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to make the motion that we reconsider our position so that I can then make a motion to monitor with amendments.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
All right, so Councilmember Rodriguez. So I'm going to go ahead and move that we change our position to monitor with the encouragement of making the amendment, specifically change the government so it reflects population. 2, some type of guarantee of Northwest Rail. And 3, some type of guarantee that we're not double taxed in the event that, double taxed for a train should we not get front range passenger rail coming through Longmont.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mayor Pro Tem, your hand's not up, and I'm not arguing with you. You haven't said anything tonight, and you're the only nay on this, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on the matter.
I believe it's excessively premature to be voting on something along these lines with so many outstanding issues. So I'm going to be a nay until they either flesh it out or somebody does eventually down the road. I just don't, I can't get there right now with the amount of information that's available.
Thank you. Councilmember Peck?
So thank you, Mayor Bagley, and I agree with you, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez. There is a group in Boulder County, which I have asked that Longmont be a part of, which would be the mayor, probably Phil Greenwald and myself, to work with the county to come up with the amendments that we present to the bill. And that then they would come back to us with the draft of the bill with the amendments. And that would be what our vote would be, to monitor it with the amendments.
And before I call on it, but as an aside, I wouldn't say this, Claire Levy is one of the most intelligent elected political leaders that I've ever met. That woman should be governor, not because I agree with her policies, but in these meetings, she is so clear spoken and thoughtful on her positions. It's rare that when I hear someone talk, I go, you know what? She didn't say one extra word unnecessarily. She's just awesome. She's been doing great on this. So Councilmember Martin?
Yeah, it seems to me that what you all are describing about having a group with a specific set of amendments is that our position should be oppose unless amended with the set of amendments. And so I'm wondering if the motion should be changed.
Well, the only reason I didn't do that is because in talking with people, it's a fine line. Their argument is we need to get the funding from the federal government if we're going to do this. And if we're not in agreement, if Longmont of all people are opposed to it, they're not going to give us the money. And if we don't get the money, you're not going to get a train no matter what. But we can't commit to Northwest Rail because there's legal reasons. Behind closed doors, we all know we want it. But so it's all that stuff. And so that's the reason why I said monitor with amendments, so that they can then look at the federal government and say that Longmont is not opposing. Let's go with Councilmember Christensen, then Mayor Pro Tem.
I agree with the mayor's strategy there, because we really do want to have mass transit on the Front Range and actually all over Colorado. And this is a time when there are going to be large infrastructure investments, and we want to jump on that and get some of that. But as we've all observed, just getting something without having it clarified has not proven to get Longmont anything at all. So we want it, I think the strategy really is to encourage them to monitor it with amendments, to not discourage them and say we're against it, because we're not really against it. We're against something that's half-baked. And so if we have the opportunity to have a voice in amending it, that would be excellent.
We will have that voice. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Somewhat understanding how this process works as far as convening and joining said Boulder County ad hoc committee that's proposing amendments to our legislators, watching them get those amendments put into the bill, having that bill go through the legislative process at the Capitol, and knowing how long their legislative session is. I just don't think that's going to happen this year. So I don't think it's it's really worth our time necessarily to try to force something through in this legislative session when I said, in my opinion before, that it was premature. I think that's part of it, is that having been the liaison for commuting solutions for a little while now, and knowing that Councilmember Peck has also been in part of these conversations as well, listening to the infighting just in commuting solutions about what the routing would be it going through Boulder to Longmont, or going down the I-25 corridor, or going down a 287 corridor without diverting westward towards Boulder. There's a lot of infighting about that alone. So seeing something really concrete come out of this ad hoc committee, I just doubt the timing of it. And again, I think the legislation was premature.
I also received another idea is that RTD directors could actually say that unless it's Northwest Corridor, they will not partner with Amtrak, which would be a powerful move. So I know that there are directors who are also trying to do that. But again, my motion is to encourage movement, and I share Mayor Pro Tem's concerns, but the money's available now, and either we go for it or we don't. We get the money now or we don't, is what people are telling me. So let's go ahead and vote. All in favor of moving that we monitor with the amendments as listed, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
All right, the motion carries 6-1 with Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez respectfully dissenting. Thank you. All right, let's go on. Sandy, with the other legislative bills. How many we got tonight?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley, members of council. Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager, and it's kind of Throwback Tuesday tonight because we're also going to talk about Senate Bill 200 one more time. So you may remember Senate Bill 200 is the one that's concerning measures to further environmental protections, particularly greenhouse gas emissions. You remember there was all kinds of back and forth about the costs for the bill, and the main issue is that the PUC is the one regulating municipalities, which is not only inappropriate, but takes away your authority to be able to do that work. And so since then, actually at the same time as you were meeting last week, the Senate Committee on Transportation and Energy were also meeting, and they amended the bill to be very clear about the costs. So the caps on the emissions, they actually put into the bill. So that really does take out any questions about the cost that we had before. And so that's very helpful. So the only issue at this point is still the fact that the PUC would be regulating municipalities, which is inappropriate. It doesn't happen in any other legislation. So it's not that we don't appreciate the legislation or what they're trying to do, but this manner is not great. So last week, the motion was that we monitor Senate Bill 200 and with recommendations, and that staff would bring back the recommendations. So that is my one and only recommendation, is that we continue to monitor Senate Bill 200. And the recommendation part of that is to let our legislators know that it's not the right manner to have the PUC regulating municipal electric utilities.
So moved. All right, it's moved by myself, seconded by Dr. Waters.
Second, okay.
Okay, again, we can talk all night about this, but does anyone oppose this motion? Okay, so if we're all going to say things that we're all in agreement with, let's just keep our comments short. But Councilor Martin?
Yeah, I will keep it short. I actually still oppose two things about the bill. One is, as Sandy said most emphatically, the PUC should not be in our business. And the other thing is that the PUC is already in our business because mandates and carbon taxes are in direct opposition with one another. Even though this is a small little carbon tax, it sets a bad precedent because a carbon tax on a generation utility with a mandate means that it's paying to fulfill its mandate. It's paying with money that it could be spending as on capital investments on renewable energy. This is dumb. It's too late for carbon taxes or fees or whatever you want to call them. We have a mandate, let us pursue it. Okay, that's my comment. I've stated it. Now we'll vote unless somebody else has something to say.
Councilmember Christensen.
I agree with what most other people have said. However, I do think that Colorado as a state needs to have a state strategy. I don't know who would monitor it, not oversee it, but monitor it and encourage it and force people to write up reports and deliver them to the PUC so that every town, every municipality and region has some kind of plan. That I think is the best way of looking at this. However, that would have to be specified as what PUC actually does. Do they have the right to punish people? And as Councilwoman Martin said, to punish them with carbon taxes for when they're already trying to do the right thing. That's the wrong direction. But to force every region in the state to have a plan for themselves and submit it every year to the PUC, I think is actually a good idea. Provided it doesn't undermine our municipal authority of home rule.
All right, motion is that we follow staff's recommendation. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries unanimously. Sandy, that's it for the state bills tonight?
We have one more, a very quick one, Mayor Bagley. This is Senate Bill 21-242 concerning the expansion of the allowable uses for the Housing Development Grant Fund. So what this would do is it would allow the Division of Housing to expand some of their development grant for rental assistance, tenancy support programs, awarding grants and loans for the purchase of underutilized hotels and motels that could be used for housing. And so since this is something that the city has been thinking about, looking at, that this is something that if these funds were available, we may be able to leverage them as well. And so the staff recommendation is to support Senate Bill 242.
I move to support if we can.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Hidalgo Faring, seconded by Councilmember Martin. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of supporting this bill, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries unanimously. All right, let's move
Thank
on.
you.
Let's take a 3 to 5 minute break for last call or final call public about to be heard, and then we'll wrap up the meeting. So we'll be back in 3 to 5. Thank you.
Hi, folks. This is the final public invited to be heard. Please remember, if you're going to join us and call in, to enter the meeting ID on your screen and to mute your live stream and listen for instructions on your telephone. We will call you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number, at which time you will have 3 minutes to state your case. You'll be asked to enter your name and address before you speak.
All right, do we have people in the queue?
No one in the queue just now.
All right, let's wait another 30 seconds or so just to be sure. If there were people in the queue, I'd say let's go and leave it open. Let's just wait.
Okay.
All right, is there anybody in the queue?
Not at this time.
All right, let's go ahead and close final call public invited to be heard and move on to mayor and council comments. Anybody want to say anything? We're going to go with Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I just want to say it was very nice to be able to attend the ribbon cutting for the Hilton Garden Inn. Having not done a ribbon cutting in well over a year, it's very nice to get out and be able to socialize a little bit and see some projects still going forward in the city after this long pandemic that we've been going through for a while. And then also looking forward to former Mayor Wilson's unveiling of his sign at Union Reservoir on Friday afternoon. So thank you.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you. I would just like to give thanks and encouragement to our public safety organization. They did a good job this week. I don't want to say any more than that, but thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? All right, Harold, anything from you?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
Perfect. Eugene, are you even here? Oh, look.
Still here, Mayor. No comments.
Cool. All right. Guys, do we have a motion to adjourn? All right, I'll take that. Councilmember Christensen has made a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Councilmember Peck has seconded it. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries unanimously. A great meeting, effective, efficient, great thoughts, folks. All right, so thank you, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.